Hi everybody, I'm Jev and I'm here to read to you. So today we are reading The Treasure of the Isle of Mist by W W Tarn. He, I think, was Scottish. He lived in Scotland for a lot of his life. I'm fairly certain he was Scottish. He had one daughter whose name was Otta, O-T-T-A. Not sure. I would open up another browser window and check, but I think that might cause something to crash, and we don't want that to happen. I'm hoping you can hear me. And hi, fragilities. Now, just a wee heads up, a wee tip for everybody who's watching. I don't actually usually chat during my reading. I will chat between chapters and at the very beginning and end of each session. So I am going to get that out of my way so I'm not looking at it, and I will get started. Welcome. I do hope you have your drink of water handy. I have mine, just not in the usual place. Drink of water, snacks to snack on, and somewhere comfortable to sit or lie while you listen. And we shall start our new book, The Treasure of the Isle of Mist by W W Tarn. And I'm going to keep saying it that way because I don't know anything else. So, Chapter 1, The Gift of the Search. The student and Fiona lived in a little grey house on the shores of a grey sea loch in the Isle of Mist. A loch is an inlet of water in Scotland. A sea loch is an inlet of water that is specifically connected to the sea, so it has salt water in it. And the student is the name that the author gives to himself, the fictionalized version of himself for the story. So I shall continue. In the Isle of Mist, also known as Skye in real life, the student was a thin man with a stoop to his shoulders, which old Anne McDermott said came of reading books, but really it was because he had been educated at a place where this is expected of you. Fiona, when she was doing nothing else, used to help Anne to keep house, rather jerkily in the way of a learned man, in the way a learned man may be supposed to like. She was a long-legged creature of 15 who laughed when her father threatened her with school on the mainland, and she had a warm heart and a largish size in shoes. Sometimes they had dinner, sometimes nobody remembered in time, and they had sunset and salt herrings with a bowl of glorious yellow corn daisies to catch the sunset. Corn daisies are a type of flower. It was Anne who saw the old hawker crossing the field behind the house and burst in on the bookroom to inform the student that he wanted buttons. A hawker is someone who used to go door to door selling things. She was met by a patient remonstrance for her ambiguous use of language. For, said the student, if you mean that buttons are lacking to me, there may be something to be said for you. But if you mean that I desire buttons, then indeed I do not desire buttons. I desire... Whereupon Anne fled, and went out to meet the hawker. The frail old man, bending under his pack, was crossing the meadow behind the house, brushing his way through the September clover. His white hair was uncovered, save for the huge umbrella, which he carried alike in sun and rain. But youth still lingered in his eyes, which were bright as dawn and deep as the sea caves. Behind him followed a little rough-haired terrier, black as jet, his inseparable companion. At the door he unslung his pack, and leaving Anne to select her buttons, passed straight through, knocked on the big book-room door, and went in. The student wheeled round in his chair and began to grope about. "Have you seen my spectacles?" he said. "I can't see who you are till I put them on, and I can't put them on till you find them for me, for I can't see to find them myself unless I have them on." Pardon this involved sentence. He must have been very short-sighted, so he had them off to read his books. The old hawker picked up the missing spectacles and handed them over. "You wouldn't remember me in any case," he said. "I last saw you 25 years ago when you were trying to dig at Veria. There was an old man there, do you remember, being beaten by armed bashi-bazooks, and you held them up with an empty revolver, and you took the old man to your camp and nursed him, and you said things to the Turkish governor, and My excavations came to an untimely end, said the student. I always owed that old man a grudge for being beaten before my tent. Why couldn't he have been beaten somewhere else? I should like to meet him again and tell him precisely what I thought of his conduct. You have done both now, said the hawker, and it is his turn. Impossible, said the student. He was as old 25 years ago as you are now. At my age, said the old man, one grows no older. No one who walks the world as I do need ever grow any older. You can walk 30 miles on Monday when you are 20 years old. Good. If you can do it on Monday, you can do it on Tuesday, and if on Tuesday, then on Wednesday. Therefore, by easy reckoning, you can do it as well at 80 years old as 20. Thus you never age. There's a flaw in that somewhere, said the student. I know, it's the heap. How many grains of sand make a heap? How many buttons do you want? Said the hawker. You saved my life once, you shall have all the buttons you want for nothing. I thought you couldn't answer my question, said the student, but we are getting on much too fast. We haven't really begun yet. I suppose you came here to sell things. Anne seemed to know you, and she said I wanted buttons. I pointed out to her that her statement was either an untruth or a truism, and equally objectionable. In either sense, and now you repeat it, just as I was beginning to consider you quite an intelligent person. By the way, who are you? I have a different name in most countries which I visit, said the old man, but by profession I sell buttons, and other things. What sorts of things? Said the student. I have dreams, said the old man. Dreams and the matter of dreams, imaginings of the impossible come true, the wonder of the hills at sunrise, the quest of an unearthly treasure among the moonflowers, the look in the eyes of a child that trusts you. The student took off his spectacles, rubbed his eyes hard, and settled his shoulders. I desire something very much, he said. If you can do all that, you can give me what I desire. The hawker frowned. You are a scholar, he said, and I can do nothing for scholars. You need no ideal, for you have one. You need no dreams, for your life is one. For you the earth pours out hidden treasure, and the impossible comes true day by day. What you desire just now is a long, definite inscription to settle a controverted point in your favour. And if I could give it to you, just think how miserable you'd be. Nothing further to argue about. There. And several quite happy and contentious professors would be reduced to such straits that I don't know what crimes you might all commit. You might even take to making money. If I wanted money, said the student, I should, being an intelligent person, at once proceed to make it. Then I should have to live in the big house again instead of letting it, and my precious time would be spent in arguing with my gardener and endeavouring to conceal my ignorance from my chauffeur. As it is, we live anyhow, and I am happy. Happiness doesn't score any points in the game, said the hawker. What good do you and your inscriptions do anyway? That's not my job here, said the student. That will come on afterwards. Besides, I don't want to do good. I am old-fashioned. Why should I take my neighbour by the throat and say, let me do good to you, or it shall be the worse for you and yours? Besides, I can't do good. You can't dot the wilderness with prosperous homesteads when half the years the oats don't ripen till the year after. Besides, I do good. I have let the big house to shooting tenants, and it's excellent for their health, besides 17 other reasons which I can enumerate, if you are able to bear them. Besides, Fiona is fond of me. Yes, said the old man softly, that's your real justification, and it's a great deal more than I could give you. My hawker's licence doesn't cover the big things. How many buttons do you want? Fiona came scrambling through the open window and curled herself up on the rug with her head on the student's knee. The student stroked her hair. Tell me what it's all about, she said. "This gentleman," he said, "once interrupted a very important piece of work which I was doing, and I was just about to tell him exactly what I thought of him when you interrupted me." The old hawker had risen and bowed courteously to the girl. "My dear young lady," he said, "I have been searching my pack for a present for your father and found nothing suitable, but perhaps I could find something for you." Fiona jumped up. "Have you a hedgehog?" was her question. "I do not carry them with me as a general thing," said the old man. "No doubt one could be got, but why a hedgehog?" "I want one for the urchin," she said. "You see, it's his namesake." "I see," said the old man quite gravely. "And who is the urchin?" "The urchin," said the student, "is a young rascal who is the son of my shooting tenant. He plunders my daughter of all her possessions, and she abets him in every form of villainy." "I do try to stop him throwing stones at things," said the girl. "Here are hedgehogs," said the hawker. "Isn't that lucky now?" Past the window came 5 hedgehogs in a solemn row, 2 big and 3 little. Behind them, marshalling the procession, walked the black terrier with an eye of happy drollery. "There's something wrong about those hedgehogs," said the girl. "They don't do things like that." "I don't think I want a hedgehog any more, thank you." "How did you make them do that? Is your dog a conjurer?" "I never harm anything," said the old man, so that many creatures will come to me when I call. But I have better presents than that." "Choose for her, my friend," said the student. The old man began talking to himself in a low voice. "Youth she has," he said, "and freedom, and the joy of life. Wonder also, and dim imaginings of unseen things, and of the things which men desire, fame and power, are not worth giving, and love is not mine to give. I have it. I give you the search," he said, "the search for the treasure of the Isle of Mist. Others have searched for it before, and some have found, but the treasure never grows less." "That's splendid," said the girl, "and when I find the treasure I will buy my father 7 great books which no one else wants to read, and he will be perfectly happy." "But I did not promise treasure," said the old man. "I promised a search." Fiona's face fell. "Then am I not to find anything at the end of it?" she asked. The old man chuckled quietly. "I did not say that either," he said. "There is a treasure, and you shall search for it, and you will find it if you are able. Many there are who helped to build it up. Cuchulainn and the forgotten heroes who fought before Cuchulainn, Ossian and the forgotten bards who sang before Ossian, Columbia and the forgotten saints who died before Columbia. Each has added something to the pile. It is their treasure which you shall seek for. That is my gift to you." "How shall I know where to begin?" asked the girl, "and may I take the urchin with me?" "Whether you can take the urchin with you or not depends on his capacity to go," said the old man. "And as to beginning, I think you will find that the search will begin itself, independently of you. It always does. But I can give you something that will help you." And he took out of his pocket a red copper bangle, rudely hammered out with some rough implement, which he slipped over her wrist. "That was made long ago," he said, "made by men to whom metal was a new toy, men who perhaps were nearer to the heart of things than we are." "You will stay and have some dinner, will you not?" said the student. "At least, if this is a dinner night. Fiona, is this a dinner night?" "I have my doubts," said the girl. "Oatcake and honeysuckle, I expect." "And what better?" said the old man. "But I fear I could not dine with you were it ortolans and tokay, for I may never eat beneath a roof. The open moor is my dining hall, and the stars serve me, and the long white road is calling me even now. But I think that before the treasure is found, you will see me again." There you go. That's the end of chapter 1, and it sounds a little bit odd. And we've had some other odd stories before. We haven't finished yet. I'm just taking a break between chapters. We've had odd stories before, haven't we? We have had The Princess and the Goblin, and The Princess and Curdie were a pair of stories that were a little bit odd. I don't think this is the same sort of odd, but it does seem rather odd. And my computer is looking not quite so stressed out now. We're down to 93% CPU usage, which really is rather much. And 72% on the RAM, so that's not as bad as it was. I was going to open something up to use it, but I don't think I shall. But I shall close something and see if that helps. Because sometimes if you actually close a few things on your computer, it runs a little more happily. Right, that's working okay there. There was one thing I was going to look for. I don't remember what it was, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to give you a couple of links. I'm going to type them in here so that you can use them at some stage. So what I've done is I've given you a link for our Discord server. If you would like to go over there and join it, you're most welcome to. Some people, when they're listening to a story, can't sit still. And so if you're one of those people, one easier way to be able to concentrate on a story and not feel the need to move and wriggle and get restless and want to go and do something else is to actually do some drawing. And it's quite a sketching, drawing little doodles of that are connected with the story that you are listening to is a really good way to keep your mind focused on what you are listening to instead of having to have your mind scattering about the place even though you're wanting to focus. So you're welcome to join our Discord server. If you do any little drawings, then you can share them over there. From time to time, obviously it's been a little while, I will actually put up illustrations I find that are related to the current book that we're reading. I'm a bit behind on those, sorry. I missed all of the illustrations for the Railway Children, so I will see if I can find some of those and put those up for you. There's one or two other people who talk over there, and I will usually write in there when I'm going to be doing a reading. I read on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays at 3 p.m. New Zealand time, so that's probably whatever a day before that is in your time. If you're in the States or Canada, go and find a website that tells you like time and date. That will tell you if you're wanting to find out. Also, the other link I've put there is my YouTube channel, which is where I put stories that I have done in the past. And the stories that have been up here on Twitch, they will last here for 2 weeks, and then they will get transferred over to there. And they'll be added to playlists for the different stories, the different books that we've read. Hi Forez, good to see you here. And yes, I'm doing well. I hope you are too. Forez is one of our regulars who comes along and listens to stories. Probably while he's going off to sleep in the evening. I'm not sure. I can't remember what time it is where he lives compared with here in New Zealand. And I need to have a drink of water because I haven't yet. 6 a.m. Oh my goodness. I forgot. Yeah. Sorry. You're just heading off to bed, are you? You've been gaming all night? Yes, I'm doing well. Right, I'm about to start reading the next chapter. And I'll just so you know, Forez, I actually put some eyes on my webcam so I can see where I'm meant to be looking when I'm looking at everybody. And I'm also monitoring my new lava lamp. It's got a sticker on it which I'm trying to remove, and it's finally got warm enough to be able to actually do the lava lamp thing going bloop, bloop, bloop. There we go. And it's just keeping me company at the moment. And it's working better than I thought and sooner than I thought. I thought I was going to have to wait for another hour or two. So that's lovely. I'm pleased with that. Right, we shall read with the next chapter, The Treasure of the Isle of Mist by W W Tarn, and it's a book that's set in the Isle of Skye, which is off the northwest coast of Scotland. If you look at my Instagram feed, you will see that I have put a photograph of a page in an atlas that shows where it is. So yeah, look for jevvv, jevvvnz on Instagram and you'll find me. I shall carry on with chapter 2, The Beginning of Trouble. I'll just move my chair a little closer, it's a bit too far away, sorry. The beginning of trouble. Man, said the student, is a weird creature. He dimly remembers that he began his evolution, not as a pair, but as a horde, and to the horde he still seeks, forming huge crowds during his working days, and on his holidays merely transferring the same crowds in their totality to some other place, accompanied by a great deal of purposeless noise. Apart from his crowd, he apparently feels chilly, and without noise, unhappy. Nothing is more striking to the reflective mind than the abdication of civilization in the face of meaningless noises. I think the student might be a student of philosophy or something like that, where there's lots and lots of words that go over my head. Daddy, said Fiona, I want your advice on the matter of treasure hunting. For if two go together, they don't make a crowd and they needn't make a noise. Quote correctly, said the student. What Homer said was that if you and I went to look for a treasure, I, being a mere man, would find it at once by logical processes of induction and deduction, while you, being a superior woman, were losing yourself in the quicksands of the intuitive shortcut. Sir, said the girl, your word is law to me, therefore deduce. Persiflage, said the student, is not to be encouraged in young children. I think that's a word we need to look up. Someone write it down and then find the definition when we're finished and put it over on Discord. There you go. Task for today. So, yeah, when you're listening to me reading, bring along a pencil and paper for either words or drawings. Remember that if you were to force me to do so, I might come with you, and then I should see exactly how you bungled the thing. But that's what I want you to do, Daddy, said Fiona. I don't, said the student, though treasure hunting is quite an ancient and respectable amusement. For treasure, some have descended the crater of Popocatépetl. Popocatépetl? That may be a real place in history. Some have dived at Tobermory, which is in Scotland. Some have dug in Kensington Gardens, that's in London. Alexander found a treasure at Persepolis, and Essex lost another in Cadiz harbour. The treasure of the Incas lies hid in a Peruvian ravine, known but to 2 Indians at a time. The plunder which Alaric took from Rome is still beneath the river, which he diverted to guard it. No one has ever found the hoard of Captain Kidd, or the gold carried in the Venetian galleon which sailed with the Armada and went on the rocks in this lock. The pursuit of treasure is therefore, no doubt, for the young, a legitimate pastime. Daddy, said Fiona, did one of the Armada ships really go ashore here? Yes, my dear, said the student. She was a great Venetian, called after the Madonna of the Holy Cross, and she carried the doubloons contributed by the church. That's not the treasure the old man meant, said the girl. It is not, said the student. We know all about the Venetian ship. The crew were mostly knocked on the head, but the captain brought the doubloons ashore and hid them. He himself was saved by my ancestors for the time being, to whom he gave a map showing the place in the cave in which the treasure was hidden. He never came back for it. So far everything proceeded on approved lines. Unhappily my ancestor was a careless sort of person and gambled the plan away. We never heard any more of it. It is, however, a family tradition that there was nothing on the plan to identify the cave, and as this coast and the islands in the loch A honeycombed with caves, it would be of little use if we had it. No one knows whereabouts the galleon went ashore. On calm nights her officers may be seen swimming around the cliffs, keeping guard still over their holy gold. Angus MacIan saw one once and tried to speak to him, but he turned into a seal and just looked at Angus with large, patient eyes, and Angus's boat was wrecked the week after. Now, in that part of Scotland, there used to be believed to be creatures called sealkies, which were people who turned into seals. One of the stories is that they were people who had died. Another story is they were people who had been taken. They were seal people. So it sounds like he's talking about a sealkie. And did you never search for the gold, Daddy? Asked Fiona. Oh, that's right, he's meant to be an archaeologist. Never, my dear, he said. In the first place, it would mean a minute examination of some 170 caves. In the second place, half of the caves are not mine. In the third place, it is not the kind of treasure I want. In the fourth place, I haven't time. In the fifth place, I am morally certain it is not there now. In the sixth place, the government would claim it as treasure trove. And in the seventh and last place, I never thought about it till you asked me. I'm not getting any further with my treasure hunting, Daddy, said Fiona. Let's go out together and start. My dear, said the student, it's your search, not mine. It's no use my trying to come with you, and I have a fancy that it won't begin like that. Can you tell me how to begin then, Daddy? She asked. I suppose by taking no notice of it, he said. It was to begin itself, wasn't it? And I have an uncomfortable suspicion that you hunt this kind of treasure by turning around and going the other way. So I think you'd better run out and find the urchin, and I'll get back to my inscriptions. The urchin was Fiona's principal ally, a troublesome ally, owing to his propensity for throwing stones. She found him now on the shore, steadily bombarding a shore lake that would move a little way out of range and then sit down again, affording a splendid target. Luckily, the enthusiasm of the persecutor in pursuit was well matched by the inaccuracy of his aim. Urchin, she called out, if you hurt that bird, the little people will take you. I thought I'd knocked that into you all right, even if you are in English and slow in the uptake. All right, said the urchin with a grin. We conquered you anyway. Because she's Scottish and he's English. As a matter of fact, said the girl, it was we who annexed you. If your people are as bad shots as you, urchin, it must have been quite easy. You can't hit a bird sitting. Can't I? Said the urchin. You watch. Another fling, and horrors. The shore lark rolled over, twittering helplessly and miserably. Fiona was across the rocks like a young goat, and when the urchin, contrite but defiant, arrived, she had the wounded bird in her hands, and was holding it to her breast, feeling gently for its hurt. It lay quite still, panting, and watching her with quick, bright eyes. Broken wing, she said. I believe it will mend. Urchin, you are a mere beast. You'd better go home. I don't want ever to see you again. The urchin turned scarlet. That's just like a girl, he said. First you tell me I can't hit the old bird, which is the same thing as telling me to hit it. And then when I do hit it, you turn round on me and call names. And all the time you're just as bad as I am. And the urchin turned and stalked off, an heroic figure with the mien of a Marcus Curtius, about to save his country by leaping into the gulf. Unhappily, there was a real gulf, and the boy, head in the air, rolled neatly into it and emerged from between two rocks, dripping, and no longer heroic, rubbing a torn stocking and a scraped shin. It was too much for Fiona's gravity. Urchin, she called, come back here, quick! And as the unhappy urchin stood in doubt, hither and thither, dividing the swift mind, she slid over the rocks and caught him. My fault, she said, and I'm sorry all the way through. Now I'll mend you first, and then we must mend the bird. And then what'll we do, said the boy. Let's do something harmless for a bit. Hunt for shells or shrimps or Treasure, suggested Fiona, rather shyly, and by the time they had reached the house, she had repaired the urchin and disposed the wounded bird as comfortably as possible. The boy had been put in possession of the essential facts of the case. "Marvellous," was the urchin's comment. "Now don't you see, Fiona, you can have your treasure when we find it, and I'll have the Spanish treasure when we find it, and there we both are. I want lots and lots and lots of those doubloons." "What for?" said Fiona. "Gun," said the urchin. "Donald Ruard has an old gun which he would sell me for £2. He says one barrel shoots all right sometimes, and I would use the rest of the doubloons to buy cartridges. Then I could kill curlews." "You little wretch," said the girl. "You won't kill my curlews when I'm about." Curlews are a type of bird. "And anyhow, your old gun would probably blow you up first. And anyhow, you haven't got the doubloons yet, and they're not yours if you do find them." "Whose would they be?" asked the urchin. "I suppose my father's," said Fiona, "but it depends on which cave they were in." "Come on then," said the boy. "I'm going to ask him for them." The student took the interruption good-humouredly. "I am in the 2nd century," he said. "Doubloons have not yet been coined. As to these doubloons, I'm quite sure that they are not there, wherever there may be. But if they are there, I have no objection to the urchin fighting the government for them. Urchin, would you like a deed?" A deed being like a certificate of title of ownership. Yes. And to the delight of the urchin, the student proceeded to make out a document which called on all men to know that the said student thereby assigned to the said urchin all the estate, right, title, and interest, if any, of the said student in and to a certain treasure of doubloons or other coins once carried in the galleon called Our Lady of the Holy Cross, were the same a little more or less, all good deeds get that in somewhere, said the student, end quote, to hold to the said urchin and his heirs, another quote, but I don't suppose the heirs will see much of it, end quote, to the intent that he might become a wiser and better urchin and not interrupt the said student any more when he wanted to work. This being done, the student signed his name at the end, made a beautiful blot of hot red sealing wax, and put his signet ring on it, and made Fiona sign her name as witness, which is probably not legal, he explained cheerfully, because she's related to him, probably. Then he handed over the deed to the rejoicing urchin with the remark that it was quite as good as many lawyers' deeds, and drove the pair of them out of the book-room. "Good," said the urchin. "Now I've a treasure just the same as you." "If we find them," said Fiona. "Well, let's go and start hunting for them at any rate," said the boy. "Pardon me," said the shorelark, "if I interrupt, but you might be the better of a few hints." The shorelark. This is the bird that was injured. Fiona dropped on her knees and took the little bird in her hands. "So you can talk," she said. "That's jolly. You've a first-rate chance of returning good for evil and making us feel worms." "Don't talk worms," said the shorelark. "You have entirely omitted to provide me with any. Send him to get some and I'll tell you something." He can't understand what I'm saying anyhow. "Urchin," said the girl. "He's asking for worms. Go and get him some." "One would think you and he could talk to each other," said the boy. "Silly, I call it. Going on like that. I suppose that's what girls do." "Urchin," said Fiona, "when you and I have a row, what happens?" "You happen," said the urchin. "You've 3 years' pull." 3 years older than him. "'Tisn't fair, just like a girl, to go and have 3 years' pull of a chap." "Stop grousing," said the girl, "and get me the worms. There's a dear little boy." The urchin flung the nearest book at her, missed as usual, and having thus made his honour white, departed, declaring in simpler language that the love of worms was the root of all evil. "I can't tell you much," said the shorelark, "but one sometimes picks up things hopping about, and I heard you say treasure. If you mean the Venetian ship, don't start without consulting the finner. He is very old, and I believe that he knows everything that happens in this loch." "I don't really mean that," said Fiona. "That's half a jest. I mean my own search, the search for the treasure of the Isle of Mist." "We have all heard of it," said the shorelark, "and we all know that you cannot find it by looking for it. All I can tell you is this. The Curlews have a tradition that the last man who found it went up a hill. That is what they tell each other when they call in the spring, and I believe they know. They are like little spirits of the hills themselves, said Fiona. Tell me why it is I can understand you. I have no idea, said the shorelark. I am only a little bird and I don't know very much. I chanced speaking to you because I wanted worms. The girl slipped across into the bookroom. Daddy, she said, come back out of the 2nd century and tell me why I can understand the shorelark. The student looked up with a patient smile and far-away eyes. It isn't time to come back yet, he said, and I have not fully grasped your meaning. You appear to refer to some conversation with some bird. There are precedents, of course. For instance, the philosopher Empedocles, having been a bird himself in a former life, remembered their speech. He ended up by leaping into Etna. That's a volcano. Siegfried, also having bathed in the blood of Fafnir, followed the voice of a bird of the wood. He ended up by losing his love and his life. There was once a sailor who took the advice of a parrot and was hanged. Birds are light-minded, as the poet Aristophanes discovered, and it would seem that little good comes of talking to them. My shorelark is a darling, said Fiona, and I don't intend to be hanged. That, said the student, is a providence pleases. One never knows, as my poor ancestor said when he fell into a bear trap and found the bear there before him. Oh, Daddy, said the girl, did he really? And what happened? This ancestor of mine, said the student, was a very strong man. If he had not been, someone else would have killed him first, and he would not have been my ancestor. The other man would have been someone else's ancestor, so to speak. Being a very strong man, he naturally killed the bear. He must have, or he would not have lived to be my ancestor. In those days everyone lived in caves, and he lived in a cave too, and he always killed the other man, sometimes fairly, sometimes, I regret to say, otherwise. He courted my ancestress by knocking her down from behind with the blunt end of a stone axe, a method which I do not defend, but when her senses returned she told him he had acted like a man, and they became a most devoted couple. This was partly due, no doubt, to the fact that he never saw the meaning of the things she said. She took good care that he shouldn't, for though slow of wit, he was handy with his axe. Their life, I think, must have been very happy, till one day he found a red stone which he could heat and shape with his axe, and he hammered out that copper bracelet you're wearing. Then came the deluge, for metal meant magic then, as you know. Next day my ancestress found him conversing with the local vulture. Within a week he was giving exhibitions in other caves with the vulture's assistance. In a month he had become the tribal god, and about 2 years after, owing to the persistent failure of some of his magic to come off, he was, for a brief moment, the tribal banquet. Now you know what comes of talking to shorelarks. Daddy, she said, you can't know if that's true or not, can you? It may not all be what you call true, said the student, but it's true in quite a lot of ways. It's true psychologically and anthropologically and paleoethnologically, and that does to start with. And I certainly had ancestors, and there is a bracelet, and you were talking strange words about a shorelark, and you must really take care, my dear daughter, for you ought now to become a tribal priestess and be hurled from a high place into the sea, the first season that the herring fail. And that's the end of that chapter. What an odd little story. I wonder where this is going. I'm just having a bit of a pick at the sticker, trying to get it off my lava lamp's glass. The safety sticker, which is a lovely reminder, but doesn't come off when the glass is cold. But if you do it carefully, it looks like I can get it off now that the glass is getting quite hot. Nearly there. Yay! Sticker's off. Can't return it to the shop now. I've removed the safety sticker. There. And it's working nicely. I'll be able to, when it cools down, clean off the rest of the sticky. And I'll see if I can get the gold colour off the metal. I prefer it when they look silver, not gold. Especially with blue. No. Anyway, here we go. I'll just show you if I can. There we go. Lava lamp working. See? It looks a lot more gold than that in real life. It's cool. I remember these in the 70s. I'm that old. I'm the old lady. Anyway, we are going to carry on after I have had my drink of water. You need to have yours too. And if you haven't got it, rush off and get one. Oh, good. Yes, it's gradually improving. Whatever it was that it was doing in the background has gradually started to slow down. No, it doesn't feel like my backup drive is doing the backup. I have a backup drive plugged into my computer, and when it's running, doing a proper backup, I can feel it. It's using more power, it's spinning and all that sort of stuff more consistently. So we shall carry on. We are reading The Treasure of the Isle of Mist by W W Tarn, and we are reading chapter 3, The Haunted Cave. Ooh. A sunlit sheet of sea, violet and azure, clothed in slender cloud shadows and heaving gently to the long Atlantic ground swell. Up through the calm water to meet the eye of the gazer came the green clearness of stone and blinks of unveined sand, showing white between the brown tangled blades of the great oar-weed, and you might see a score of little cuddies, heads all one way, playing hide-and-seek in the sea forest and caring no whit for the clumsy armoured crab beneath them, who crawled sideways, a laborious patch of colour in the shimmering transparency. Up out of the deep water, the grey rocks rose clear and fine, a mass of platforms and pinnacles roughened with barnacles and tufted with dulse, that's another type of seaweed, whose crimson leaves floated and swung in the white foam of the lisping swell. And above the rocks and beyond the sea's reach, the cliff stood up black, showing all the strata that had gone to the making of it, outlined with little patches of coarse grass. On one such patch grazed without concern a sheep which had slipped over, happy in her ignorance of the fact that she could never be drawn up again alive. The wiser raven overhead was clanging away with short barks to tell his mate. On a ridge on the cliffside sat a pair of young scarfs, almost invisible save when they twisted their long necks about like two snakes. A scarf, I think, is a type of seabird. We don't have them here, not by that name. Trying to make up their minds to follow their mother, who had just flopped clumsily into the water, feet first, and had turned there and then into a miracle of easy grace as she used her head to dash the spray over her back. Might be a seal, I don't know. Out at sea, a Solon rose steadily in a sweeping spiral, the white and black of him glittering in the sun. Suddenly he checked, reversed engines, and fell plump like an inverted cross, his long, raking wings clapping to as he struck the water a moment, and he was up and there sat, choking and gobbling over his fish ere he rose again in his majestic rings. It's a diving bird of some sort. Another one I'm not familiar with. Sorry, I'm being distracted by the lava lamp. The two children had grounded their boat on a little pebble beach between the rocks, and were sitting on a big tuft of sea pinks, munching handfuls of the sweet dulse, that's the seaweed, and watching the Solon at his fishing. They were by way of fishing themselves, but the afternoon was as yet too early and too clear for them. The urchin had a pile of stones beside him, and was apparently trying to see how many times in 20 he could miss a large and obvious spur of rock. Fiona had a book of poetry and was making intermittent efforts to read, but the world was too full of things to give poetry a fair chance. The urchin threw his last stone away. Silly sitting there, here, he said. Come and explore. So, scrambling and sliding, the two made their way across the rocks, stopping at every rock pool to raise its fringe of weed with careful hands and investigate the wonder of the little world below. Sea flowers of every hue, white and green, grey and orange, purple and white and grey and purple again, some smooth and satisfied, others with tentacles greedily awash that could be induced to suck at a small finger dexterously inserted. Sea flowers, sea anemones, the little wee creatures that live in the rock pools. I remember doing this sort of thing in the rock pools down at the beach here where I live when I was growing up. Seashells of every contour, some living and clutching at the rock, some cast off and dead, others again protruding alien claws, resurrected to life to a life of artificial movement by the little hermit crabs whose tails they sheltered. Yes, we have those too, hermit crabs. They will find an empty shell and use that to cover the main part of their bodies because they don't have a hard shell on that part of them, only on their legs and their claws. So you'll see a little seashell walking along because it's got these legs poking out underneath it, and it's the hermit crab moving around. Here and there the spiky pink globe of a sea urchin waiting for the tide to float him off, and in one deep little pot, with sides green like a grotto of ferns, they found a miniature battle. A small green crab who had cast his shell sat humped up in a recess of the grotto, a thing soft and vulnerable, a delight to the enemy, and in front of him, excited and transparent, were 6 shrimps, the horn on each forehead pointed at him. From time to time some young gallant would dash in to prod the helpless monster, and at once backwater again into the ranks of his friends. The crab bore his torment with a patience born of the knowledge that each minute his new carapace was hardening. So this is a crab who's split his shell, shed his shell, and growing a new one. Once they get rid of their old shell, the new one hardens, but it's a bit bigger. Snakes do something similar. His new carapace was hardening. The shrimps had no wit to count the cost or reckon the odds that the rising tide might bear them away in safety from the day of vengeance. On hands and knees, not daring to breathe on the limpid surface of the pool, the children watched the little drama. From the cliff top the heated air rose dancing into the sky. So still were the earth and air and sea that the old finner's rise sounded as though the cliff were falling. He had worked nearer in to the rocks than seemed possible for his 90 feet of blubber and muscle, and as his black side rolled over, the water about him boiled like a pot. But he did not splash, for he had been well brought up, and always knew what his tail was doing, though it was so far away. So the finner, I think, is a particular type of whale. "Shiver these rocks," he began in a rage as he flung 2 fountains out of his nose. Then he caught sight of Fiona and the gleam of the red bracelet. "Oh, my fins and flippers," he spouted. "I ask pardon, young lady. I haven't the manners of a grampus, and they told me about you." "Who's they?" said Fiona, ungrammatically. "Friends at court." "Friends at court," said the finner. "What a thing to have! No need of the old sailor man," said I, "but they said I must go, and I've scraped the barnacles off my precious tail. Will it run to some tobacco?" "Will what run?" said the girl. "Your tail? What is it you want?" "Hints are wasted, I see," said the whale. "One question," said I, "only one, but magic is magic, you know, even for a tough old sailorman. Come now, one question. I'm too far inshore for my liking." Fiona understood. "Is it about my treasure?" she said. "Yours or that boy's there, whichever you like," said the whale, "but only one, only one." For about 2 seconds Fiona did some hard mental drill. Then she said, "Will you please tell me where the urchin can find his treasure?" "You do have luck," said the finner. "Think of it, then." "Oh, you little fishes, think of it. If you'd asked the other, I didn't know the answer. Wouldn't have got an answer, and my tail all scraped for nothing. And this one, my great-great-grandmother saw it all, and nobody knows here but me and the seals and one man, and he's too fat to count. West Cave, Scargill Island, and bring you luck, my dear. Will it run to some tobacco?" "Thank you so much," said Fiona politely, "and I'm sorry I haven't any tobacco with me, but if you could wait a few minutes." "Shiver it, I'm scraping again," said the whale. "No tobacco and very few barnacles in this world. Oh, my grandmother's flukes, I might as well be a bottlenose." It's a type of dolphin. Once more the water boiled, and beneath it the huge black body shot away to the open sea. "Fiona," said the boy, "do you really think it's cricket?" "What isn't cricket?" she asked. "Fiona," he said, "I've been a brother to you. I have done all the things a brother ought to do. I have taught you to throw like a boy. I have pinched you for new clothes. I have called you names to make you good-tempered. I have made remarks on your personal appearance to prevent your being vain. I have even fought with you solely for your good, and this is how you repay me. The other day you pretended to be talking to a shore lark. Today it is an old whale who spouted and banged his tail on the rock. If it's a joke, I don't see it. If it's not a joke, do go into a lunatic asylum and let me find a simpler job." Fiona tossed up mentally between hitting him and laughing. It came down to laughing. "Urchin," she said, "it's all right. I don't understand it much better than you do, but it has something to do with this bracelet of mine. I can really understand them, and they can understand me. If you doubt my word, we will fight a duel with the boat stretchers, and I will bury you in the sand here afterwards." "Oh, I believe you when you talk like that," said the urchin, "only it's worse than the Latin grammar. Siticus loquitur, the parrot talks, but this thing seemed to be a whale. It was very like one." "It was a whale," said Fiona. "He said his great-great-grandmother had seen the Spanish captain land his doubloons, and that it was in the West Cave on Scargill Island." "That means the big cave at the end facing the sea," said the boy. "The cave that no one has ever got to the end of," said Fiona. "The cave that's haunted," said the boy. "But of course it's haunted. It's the ghosts of the Spaniards. Silly of us not to have guessed." Fiona had a hazy recollection of things her father used to say. "I expect the haunting is thousands of years older than the Spaniards," she said. "Urchin, are you afraid of ghosts?" "Not a bit," said the urchin stoutly. "They would be splendid to throw stones at. It wouldn't hurt them." "Come on, then, let's go," said the girl. "There's lots of daylight." "None of the people here will go into it, you know," said the urchin. "I know," said Fiona. "All the more reason for going on our own. There might really be something there if no one ever goes to take it away." So the boat was launched, and the adventure also. Fiona pulled stroke, the urchin was a clumsy and unpunctual bow, and the girl had to steer from the stroke oar, which needs more doing than you may think if you have never tried it. So they were rowing with one of them holding one oar out one side and the other holding the other oar out the other side, but one of them was at the front of the boat and one of them was further back. Yeah, it's quite complicated to row when you have one oar. It's actually easier if you've got two oars, because you can keep it in balance and the boat doesn't go round in circles. Experience. But they made the end of Scargill in time, and then Fiona took both the oars and coasted, while the urchin got out a couple of bamboo poles garnished with white flies and let the casts trail, occasionally getting one of the beautiful little scarlet lithe that come to the fly with the spring and dash of a sea trout. So he was fishing. For even adventurers need supper. And so they came past many a smaller cave mouth in the black side of the island, to the huge bluff that fronts the full Atlantic and the great West Cave. Atlantic was half asleep today and muttered drowsily on the quiet rocks outside, but the great cave was seldom quiet. In the winter, when the Atlantic turned himself restlessly and spoke aloud, the sound of his speaking came back from its depths like the roar of a heavy gun, and even in the stillness the lisp of the swell in it echoed as from the roots of the island in a low intermittent boom. Outside on the calm water floated the whiskered head of a seal, watching the boat with gentle, fearless eyes. "The officer on guard," Fiona whispered, and from the black cliff's face, like a hanging fringe over the mouth of the cave, the water splashed down, trickle by trickle, in quick, heavy drops. The children rode in through the little shower, and Fiona paddled gently up the cave. Its huge limestone walls stood up stark on either hand, rising into the darkness above and sinking below into the green water as far as the eye could follow them. Near the waterline grew a little seaweed, and some white whelks clung. They're a type of little white seashell, but a twisty one. But as they went down the waterway, these vanished, and grey cliff and green water alike began to turn black, because they're going deeper and deeper into the cave. There's less light. Looking back, Fiona could see a bright patch of sky and sky-reflecting sea framed in the narrow slit of the cave's mouth. The waterway was narrowing now. She shipped her oars and stood up, using one as a paddle and instructing the urchin how to fend off the boat's stern with his hands. In front, on a ledge in the cave's roof, it was just possible to make out a row of blue dots in the growing darkness. As the boat drew nearer, the blue dots fluttered and detached themselves from the cliff, and a swarm of pigeons came whirring over the boat and down the cave towards the sunlight. "Your ghosts, urchin," said the girl. Henceforward the cave was void of life, unless some strange, eyeless fish lurked in its inky depths. Darker and darker grew the waterway, and the last gleam of light vanished. Fiona was feeling her way now, aided by the phosphorescent drip from her oar blade. Phosphorescence is a glow that happens in water when it moves, in certain conditions in seawater. It's a particular minute sea creature that glows when it's disturbed. And yes, it's another thing I've seen. It's amazing at night. If you've got a night where the phosphorescence is active, you see little waves against the edge of the beach. You see the oars, the tips of the oars moving in the water. But it's usually on a black night that you see it. Fiona was feeling her way now, aided by the phosphorescent drip from her oar blade. The urchin, with unusual sense, splashed his hands in the water to increase the pale glow, which just revealed the line of the cliff. That's the edge where the water came to it. Neither dared speak now. Possibly, had Fiona not had some idea of what was coming, she would have turned. But already there was a faint gleam ahead, faint as a glowworm, but still a gleam, and as the boat slid forward and the low boom in the depths of the cave grew closer, the cave walls very slowly began to grow grey again out of the blackness. A few minutes more and the walls were an outline, and before them a fringe of white on round wet stones. The end of the waterway, and as the boat grounded, Fiona pointed up, and the urchin, looking, saw a little round hole. A natural shaft ran down into the cave from the surface of the island, giving light enough for their eyes, now accustomed to the darkness, to distinguish outlines. They drew their boat up on the stones far enough for the swell not to dislodge it. Then the same impulse seized them both, and they burst out laughing. Not aloud, for something in the place made it impossible to laugh or talk aloud, but in a kind of mirthless whisper. "We've come without any lights," said Fiona, in an undertone. "We have," said the urchin, "but probably the stuff is only a few yards above high water mark. They wouldn't go far in." "They might have," said Fiona. "They'd have had torches or something." "Let's go as far as we can, anyway, as we're here," said the urchin. So they started scrambling over the stones in the grey half-light. Presently there rose before them a great mass of rock and earth, half blocking the cave. It looked like some old landslip. "It's easy at this end, Fiona," said the boy, and up they went, to find that the rock barrier blocked most of what little light remained. Beyond was darkness. "We must go back and get light," said Fiona. "I can't even see the stones below." A pause, then, "Stop swinging your feet, urchin, I want to listen." "I'm not." Another pause, and then the urchin spoke again in a kind of stage whisper. "I'm frightened." The words seemed squeezed out of him. "We may as well go back anyhow," said Fiona in a strained voice. Down you go, urchin." The urchin did go down at a considerable pace and ran for the boat. Fiona managed to walk by repeating to herself all the time under her breath, "You mustn't run, you mustn't run." But once in the boat she did not rebuke the urchin for standing up and taking the other oar, and the pair paddling out with many bumpings and scrapings in a more speedy and less scientific manner than that in which they had entered. Once out in the sunlight they felt better. They started automatically to fish home, and presently were talking again. But neither of them referred to the thing that was uppermost in each mind, though each was wondering if the other knew. For as they had sat on the wall of rock, each had heard clearly, in the utter darkness of the unvisited cave, the sound of heavy footsteps. And that's the last page in that chapter. And the next one is a very long chapter indeed, so I'm going to stop there. And I'm hoping that I will be able to find out for you a little bit more about the story before we start again next time, which will be in 2 days from now. It'll be, for me, Friday. If I'm back from the city in time. I'm meant to be going down to the city for someone's wedding anniversary, and I'm hoping that we will be back from the city in time for me to do Friday's reading. And if I can't, I'm very, very sorry, but know that I wanted to read. So I'm going to once again, for those of you who have been listening and have arrived late, I'm going to give you the Discord server. And I'm also going to give you the YouTube link so that if you want to catch up on any stories we've had before, you know where you can go to see them. And the Discord server is so that you can leave messages, discuss the current book that we're reading. We're not going to do a book group discussion thing. No, we're not that sort of people. If you come across any interesting information about any of the stories, you might want to share them there. That's a great idea. Also, one of the things I like doing when I'm just fiddling around on the computer is having a look at pictures of different places. And if you come across any pictures that remind you of things in any of the stories we've been reading, also the ones over on YouTube, post them there in the Discord server, and say which story you think that it reminds you of, which part of the story, if there's a particular part. The same goes for if you do any drawings yourself. Please share them with us over there. It would be lovely to get a little bit more discussion going about the stories that we're reading. And I think that's it. So until next time, enjoy your water, your snacks, your comfy seat, and your own stories. And I shall see you next time that I am here. Bye.